GYL6N. GYL6N. If you could jump into the meet, into the Nearpod, that would be fantastic. You'll see you there. So the code here, GYL6N, just up on the left-hand side there. Now we've been looking at why people trade. Okay? Now there's a lot that could be discussed with why people trade, and we're going to tackle free trade versus protectionism. We're going to have a look at some of these why we trades. We're going to have a look at in depth when we are discussing free trade versus protectionism. That will come up. Others will appear when we start discussing some other aspects of international trade, like exchange rates, like the balance of payments, etc. All right. So one of the things that we said the other day was the theoretical side of gains from trade. So things like for consumers and for producers, because remember we can get some imports of raw materials, we might, because of the competitive nature of international trade, we might actually be able to source these goods and services at lower prices, hence lowering our costs of production if we're producers, etc. We might end up having greater choice, again, both consumers and producers. That would be a benefit for them. Might be different resources that we're able to secure. We might be able to gain, from a production point of view, economies of scale, because we're engaging in a giant market, more so than just a local one. Thinking about increased competition, which might lead to efficiency gains, might lead to economies of scale gains, might lead to more revenue potential, more sales, dependent on how the competition benefits us. More efficient allocation of resources. So from an economics point of view, having trade should lead to a more efficient allocation of resources. Now, all of this, we've got to caveat this with should and might, okay? Because none of this is a guarantee. This is all in theory. And as we said before, with the HL learners, things that we haven't taken into account, right, with any of these sorts of theories are things like, the cost of transport, okay? We haven't taken into account. The exchange rates, at this point, at any rate, we haven't taken into account. So we will take some of those things into account, right? And it could be a source of foreign exchange. So you actually get the overseas capital that you might need, right, in order to use to help support your economy, maybe to help repay some balance of payments issues, right? So theoretical gains from trade, and there are quite a few of them that could potentially be mentioned and analysed. So what I'd like you to do is for you to have a go at explaining 2 theoretical gains from trade. All right, here we go. All right, 2 possible gains from trading. Yes, well done. Absolutely, Ariane, well done. right? Well done. Prices, goods that cannot be produced locally, yes. Agricultural goods that need certain temperates. Okay. Agricultural goods that need to be stored at certain temperatures or need to grow with certain temperatures. Not sure. Yes, that's a good answer. Different goods, cheaper goods, greater choice, efficient allocation of resources, yeah. Yeah, greater quality, innovation, new goods and services, all of those sorts of ideas, cheaper cost of production, access to greater variety. Yes, good. Domestic production and consumption, okay. Yeah. Okay. Increase in choices for consumers due to more supply of goods and services. Yes, well done. Lower prices, more competition. Yep, good. Fantastic. Excellent. That one ready. Yes. Well done. All right, well done, team. A couple who might still want to add. Purchasing power increases. That's good use of economic terminology, Arena. Well done. Yes, absolutely right. Good, Nisa. All right, so we just want to wait on a couple more just to add in their answers. All right. Now, the other thing you can be doing is thinking about some examples. And you might have already found some examples of two countries that trade with each other and the different types of goods that they trade, the amounts that they trade, and you can just pepper those in, right? They make a gain from this trade. Right? They're able to gain whatever the other good is that the other country is providing for them. You know? So those examples that you're able to include in your answers, even if they're not directly related, if that you can make them relate, that is helpful, because remember that idea of RLE, or real life examples, that's going to help, right? Particularly given that your mark schemes are going to require real life examples for those top end marks. Good. Yes, indeed. All right. Okay, well done, team. That's good, that one. Right. Moving on. So we need to then think about why we might want to trade, okay, right, in a little bit more depth. So that idea that we talked about factor endowments, we know this idea, we know that there are countries who will have different factor endowments. There are some countries that are extraordinarily wealthy with minerals or oil or sheep and hobbits, okay? And those countries are able to capitalize, if you will, on that endowment, that gain, right? Either the land, the labor, or the capital, and able to specialize with that, able to sell it overseas and make a gain from that, right? So trading takes place in different goods, arises from a difference in relative factor endowment between different countries. Other countries might have different cost ratios with regards to the factors. So they might still have the same factors of production, but it might cost them more efficiency-wise to produce them than the other country. So the HL learners learnt about comparative and absolute advantage the other day. This is what we're hinting at here, right? Is that those countries are going to be, some will be slightly more efficient with regards to the production process of certain goods using certain factors than others, and therefore they have that as an advantage when they consider what goods they're going to specialize in order to trade. And this one here, which is quite a common one for people to talk about, and this links us to economic development, where we say that developing countries have lower labor costs, right? So therefore that is an advantage that will possibly enable them to secure more production. They might therefore be able to specialize in certain products and certain goods and services, and that therefore may enable them to earn more revenues from it with regards to trade. What is the impact of different countries having different, apologies for the difference, different factor endowments on international trade? Go that one. Oh dear. All right. Right. What is the impact that different countries having different factor endowments has on trade? It's not written very well. The English isn't written very well. Apologies. Yes, well done. We're able to earn revenues from production and sale of those different goods or cheaper produced goods. Another couple of minutes. Lower chance of producing specific goods for trade. Oh, I see. If they have lower, yeah. So if they have less factor endowments, then they have a lower chance of producing specific goods for trade. Yes, that would be true. And are less likely to trade with the other countries, maybe less likely to trade with the other countries with specific goods. But yeah, I can see what you're going for. Countries have different cost ratios. The higher the relative abundance of labour in comparison to capital will result in lower labour costs. Yes, indeed. And the lower labour costs will enable them to produce or specialise in different products, which might enable them to earn higher revenues from the sale overseas, particularly countries with different cost ratios. Okay. Countries are more likely to purchase labour from this country. Yes, you could make that as an argument. Abundant with some resources, different cost ratios, developing countries will have lower cost of labour, making trade a more desirable option. Well done, Max. Cheaper cost of labour, able to produce more goods and services. Yes, indeed. This will give them an advantage in the international market, allowing them to potentially reap more profits here. I would go with revenues, but yes, profits eventually. Specialisation in certain goods in that country, yes. Lower opportunity cost, more efficiency with regards to international trade, okay. Cost of labour may affect the quality of the product, okay. What's the price? Yes. Fall apart in 3 months rather than be slightly more expensive football, okay. Yes, okay. We can make that as an argument. We have international quality agreements, which we can talk about in a bit, which can help with those sorts of things. So international standards, organizations which judge the standard or the quality of certain goods and services, and they give them a rating, like, you know, if you have a look on your air conditioning units, sometimes they'll have energy ratings on them. That sort of an idea. Differences in quantities and qualities are factors of production of increased consumption and production, such as developing countries which have a lower labour cost. Yes, indeed, which helps them to produce goods and services slightly cheaper, which will enable them to benefit more from trade. Land, yes, good. Good. Okay, well done. Now, as said before, remember RLE, always useful, always beneficial to try and add in wherever possible a real life example. Okay, so building up those case studies that you've got, all right, with regards to economic growth, inflation, our trade, right, building that information up so that you can just at the drop of a hat say, you know, New Zealand trades sheep and wool to Australia for tourism. Yeah, something along those lines. Good work. And as said, we are keen for international trade because one of the reasons that we've talked about before was that it was going to provide us with variety, right? But we could also make an argument that it might provide us with the quality, which is something that Fatima was suggesting, right? So we assume that consumers desire choice and diversity of products. Remember the idea of consumer choice, okay? The rational consumer, again, right? And the rational consumer will actually behave in a way where maybe that exclusivity, right, the bandwagon effect potentially, that quality, right, label, the brand might actually appeal so that therefore we get that desired choice because of international trade. It means that the marketing, the branding of these products leads them to be not the same, and we, the consumers, get the good stuff. The other day, there was a Lamborghini driving just down the road from us, which I saw and I thought, goodness me, that's a car that I used to have a picture of on the wall of my bedroom when I was a teenager. It's an impressive car. I've always liked Lamborghinis. But luxury end. Not every country can make cars. And then we talked also about the gains from specialization, right? Now, this was something that I'd mentioned quite a wee while ago, is that trade actually has nothing to do with your country borders, okay? Because it's just trade, right? Whether it's inside your country or outside your country, it really doesn't matter. The border in and of itself isn't what you're doing. The trading is what you're doing. So all that you're trading internationally means is you're just expanding your marketplace. So you've got a marketplace between here and KL, and then now you've got a marketplace between here and Guatemala, right? You've just expanded your marketplace. So as long as trade is voluntary, then international trade should be a win-win situation, right? Because everybody should be gaining from trade. Now, we're not talking about things like human rights records or labor practices. We're not talking about environmental issues with any of this. We're not talking about, because carbon footprints and how much water they use in the production of, and all of those sorts of things. That's another discussion. But if we're just talking purely from who gains from trade, we all do, right? Because we realize that trade internationally is effectively the same as trade domestically, it's just a bigger marketplace, then as long as it is voluntary, nobody is forcing the other country or the other person to trade, then it should be, according to theory, a win-win situation. All right? You don't make footballs, you don't make marginal mobile phones, you let someone else specialize in that. And Adam Smith quote there, the division of labor is limited only by the extent of the market. So therefore, our scale economies are possible. We can grow our marketplace, and by doing so, we're able to make those gains even more, because we're now able to divide our labor force up even more than we were. We're able to potentially become even more specialized and make even more gains. So trade, in theory, should be a win-win situation. And in university, one of the activities that we did was actually do the model with the actual numbers. So we calculated how much trade was occurring, and then we made it so that the markets expanded, and then we calculated the gains from trade, and we saw how global trade expanded with each passing decade. Now I'm going to move on from there. All right. One of the things that you discussed also was this idea that as a consumer, you can gain. Now, this is slightly new for us. If you don't have access to trade, then those goods and services that you can get now from trade, you wouldn't be able to get, right? You might be able to make some of them locally. They might be the same, not the same quality. They might not be the variety that you could have gotten. So therefore, when you're consuming goods, and it could be capital goods as well, when you're consuming goods, because of trade, you're actually able to consume outside the PPF, right? So if we jump into the meat here, hopefully this will work. Let me open a whiteboard. Let's open a Jamboard. Here it comes, strawberry jam. Turn on the link. Yes, that's right. And then I'm going to share this jam with you all, hopefully. Come on. All right. Okay. So, and we're going to do this, and it's going to look a little bit unusual, so I apologize in advance. All right. But if we imagine in our imagining this, our PPC curve, perfectly happy with our PPC curve. There it is. We are producing a good over here. It could be a capital good, could be a consumer good, could be ice creams, different varieties of ice creams, could be whatever. All right. So we know this one. This is our production possibility curve. Right? This is all that was possible for us to produce. But we've said with trade, we can actually gain consumption-wise out here. Right? We can actually get different or more products out here. And the way we do that is by specializing. So if in trading. So if we're going to specialize, say, in good A, that means all of our resources are being used to produce good A. And we trade. And as we trade, right, we gain not a very straight line. Right, we're actually going to gain some of good B. Right, so we're going to trade however it is that however much we trade. Right, we'll end up gaining more of good B. So let's trade a little bit more of good A. And we'd get even more of good B. So we are outside of our PPC. We're outside of what it is possible for us to produce domestically. So we end up with, if we play connect the dots, a new curve that's going to look something like this. Not going to go up that high. And what we're going to call this is we're going to call this a consumption cost. Right, or PPF. Now, again, we're making huge assumptions. The assumption that we're only producing 2 goods still is valid. In this case, we're specializing, so we're only producing 1 good. Okay. We are trading. We haven't really clearly defined the exchange rate. We haven't clearly defined costs that might be involved with transport or insurance or any other costs that might be involved with the trade. So none of that's involved. We are assuming preferences, right, for the different countries. They do prefer this. We're able to sell all of these extra goods. So we trade this amount. We gain here consumption-wise. We trade more. We gain here. And therefore, our CPF, or our consumption possibility frontier, lies beyond what was possible for us to produce domestically. Right, now, probably should have drawn that as a straight line, to be perfectly honest, but in any case.
I should leave it. I'm sorry, I had a question.
Yes. How do I stop sharing?
Because PPF is like, I guess like the line where the nation's economy is most efficient. So like that would still be where the nation's economy is most efficient, right? It would not go up to the CPF.
No.
Okay.
The CPF is this is us. This is us as the consumers. This is our economy on production in production terms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more illustrating that we're able to gain, right, beyond what we were able to produce. And there is a lot of maths behind calculating the exchange rates, because you need to calculate an exchange rate where both parties will benefit, right? Because this is trade, so you are exchanging some of your A for some of your B. So the other party, other country who is accepting A or is trading for A is the reverse of this one, right? So they're specializing in B and making gains in A. So there has to be some form of discussion about exchange rates. And obviously, it would be useful to have a discussion about what's called cost, insurance, and freight, the CIF aspect, which is those additional costs that get added, right? Administration costs, tariffs, all of that potentially will have an impact as well. And the transport costs could be ridiculous, as we know. Shipping things from New Zealand, say, all the way to Malaysia, right, might be quite expensive. All right, so that's stop presenting the Jamboard. Right. Now that's what the idea here is. So two countries, they're producing, you're able to specialize and exchange the surplus, and by exchanging the surplus, you're able to consume outside of your PPF. All right. Now, it's not an easy thing to represent, as you saw. So we've got a couple of minutes. I would like you to have a go at drawing your own consumption possibility frontier. See if you can just do that analysis the same way I did, where you're specializing, then you're trading the surplus and gaining. Have a go.
Sorry, should we go at one last question?
Right, so the idea is that you're going to attempt to draw a CPF. So you draw a PPF, and then you're going to, just as I did, identify which good they're specializing in, then attempt to show that they are going to trade their surplus to make a gain in consumption, right, of the other good. I tend to go left to right because that's how I do it, right, with my brain. But it doesn't have to be that way because obviously the other country would be on the other axis. So the other product.
Mr. David,
Yeah.
sorry, I was wondering, like, just because they choose to specialize in like good A doesn't mean they cannot produce good B, right? They just choose not to produce good B.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we're making that assumption. That's a huge assumption to make, that they are only producing those two goods and they're choosing to specialize in one of them.
Okay.
That's not realistic at all. But it simplifies the model down to the point where we're able to make generalizations from it. And we're able to discuss, hopefully, the reality of international trade with it.
Right.
Yeah, more simple.
Right. Thank you.
All right, a couple more minutes. Just having a go at drawing, seeing if you can work out how to illustrate the points outside the curve. All right. Oh, having a go. Work. Yeah, it's not as easy as it first looks. I like what you're doing, Sharaf. Good man. Jensen. Yeah, you got the right idea, Arena. Andrew. Well done. Work. Okay. It's not easy drawing it on the computer, I know that. Well done, Fatima. Yeah, Max, your CPF seems to intercept Your CPF seems to intersect with your...
Can I have sausages?
You're talking to me and I'm in the middle of a
But
lesson, so...
I'm hungry. Please feed me.
Let me see.
Please.
Right.
Please. Can I have sausages?
Can you ask me again, please, in about 3 minutes? Right. Okay. Now, in the end, what you are attempting to do is to build a theoretical understanding, but an argument for why trade is good. Okay? Because there are some people, I know, crazily enough, there are some people who might believe that trade is not a good idea. But we are talking international trade in that sort of context, and is that the right thing to do or not? And yes, you can make the arguments about the environment and labour practices and all sorts of other questions, right? All sorts of other issues. But this is one model, one part of an argument that you could use in order to illustrate to an examiner, to illustrate to a trade skeptic, so to speak, as to why trade will actually be beneficial to all parties involved. That is, in essence, what we are attempting to do, to illustrate that there are gains from trade for the entire world when we trade. Right, well done, team. Some very good attempts there. I like what you're going to go at. It isn't easy drawing them on the computer, so please don't panic. All right. Yep. Right. Okay. Now I think that the next thing I want you to have a think about is the idea of productivity. Productivity was that idea where we talked about our resources and how much output they were able to produce given the amount of input. Now, when we talk about this, and when we talk about it from a trade, a economic growth point of view, productivity was the thing that shifted the PPC curve in the long run. Right? That was causing our economic growth in the long run, is this idea of productivity. So it is very much a long run issue, right? And when we specialize, we make that assumption that our resources are becoming more efficient. Our resources are becoming more productive, right? And we use the example about the medical profession, where the doctors start out, they might start as generalists and then slowly over time become more and more specialized and eventually become, a very unique specialist. And us lowly high school teachers, I specialize in the teaching of economics. Now, in New Zealand, I had to teach junior maths. I had to teach something called social studies, which is the New Zealand equivalent of the humanities, and I taught economics as well, as an extra, right? Because you couldn't just specialize in teaching economics. The school that we're at, I'm able to specialize in teaching just economics. Qualitative aspects, that's the idea of quality improvements. So we're improving the learning curve, we're improving the skill base, the human capital aspect.
Can I have sausages?
Oh, Harley.
Well, you can't talk to me.
Go away.
Well, I want sausages.
You're interrupting my lesson. Go away.
Well, I want sausages.
Okay, team. Now, what I'd like you to do is to review this material that we've gone over today. Have I stopped sharing? Yes. We're going to review the material that we've gone over today. Have a look through the website, the External Economy website. Start just generally thinking about the IA, right, the C3. You might have already found an article, you might be mad keen on this topic. Throw it in there and I'll have a look, right? You may want to have further conversations with me about it. It may be that you are mad keen on economic development and therefore want to do an economic development one, which will be another whole conversation. All right. Okay, team, thank you very much. I will add the recording from the lesson when it has processed. Otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, e kōrera, excuse me, which means goodbye for now.
Bye,
Have
sir.
a great day, team.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you. You all right, Sariha? Hello, Sariha.
Mr.
You all right?
Davis.
Hold on a second.